Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. You know, a couple of years ago, you attended my son's wedding, Robin.
Yep.
And I think it was a year later I attended your son's wedding.
Yes, you
right?
did.
And you knew my son when he was the little guy, and I knew your son when he was a little guy.
Yes.
And I'm not ashamed to say that I cried at both weddings.
Yes.
And you know why? It's hard to explain why. And I guess it's not that I would be experiencing something other people don't experience, but it was this fact that this person, these people who I love, I mean, as much as you can love anything, anybody, I love them so much. They have somebody who's going to make them happy for the rest of their lives, and they're going to make that person happy for the rest of their lives, right?
Yes.
I saw your daughter posted something. I mean, she's up to her third year already.
Yep. Third wedding anniversary today.
And she posted, is today the day?
Today is the day.
And she's just posted this really lovely thing about her true friend, her best friend, and it's just a wonderful thing. And so all three, your two children and my son, they have this wonderful thing. My marriage ended 9 years after it started. Mm-hmm. I don't know that my parents at my wedding were looking at me and saying, wow, this is somebody for the rest of his life. But they probably were. It's just that I didn't think of it at that time. Mm-hmm. So what is it? I mean, what do we do? What do we get right? What do we get wrong? And maybe if there's information that we can give to our children so that they don't make the same mistakes that I made, maybe it's in a book. And maybe it's a book called Marriage in Modern Life. Why it works, when it works. It's written by our guest. Her name is Dr. Ann Malec. She is a psychologist. She's the founder and managing partner of Symmetry Counseling. She's a member of the American Family Therapy Academy and the American Psychological Association. Her website is drannmalec.com. She spells her name with an E, A-N-N-E. I went there, and she's beautiful. So that's how it starts, Robin. You tell a woman she's beautiful. That's the first step, right? Good morning, Dr. Malec. How are you?
Good morning, Larry and Robin. How are you?
Good. Where are you?
I'm in Chicago.
In Chicago. All right.
Yeah.
Are you married?
I am married. 16 years.
16?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So did you have the information in the book 16 years ago?
No, 16 years ago when I married my husband, I was actually an accountant. And then after we got married, I went back to school for a long time and first became a marriage and family therapist and then became a psychologist. So, no, there was a lot of...
Really?
And I became a stepmother when I married John. And so there was a lot of learning on the job.
So an accountant, I would think, would be a good person to have in a marriage because isn't money one of the big things that causes problems?
Money is a big thing that causes problems, yes. It's and I think for multiple reasons. One of them is the fact that couples will come to a relationship with different expectations about how it's going to work. And those expectations are not always communicated. But yet they play them out in their marriage. So there are a couple things that I talk about to my clients and that are included in the book that can help couples to limit their conflict around money. And that is to have a monthly money meeting where you sit down and you talk about income, expenses, things that are coming up, how your budget is working out, if it's accurate, if it needs to be adjusted, those kinds of things.
You know what though? Can I interject something here? That I'm not married right now, and I haven't been for a long time. But that very thing you said right there helps to calm me too as an individual. Just looking at my money, looking what I need to do that's going to help it, or if I have a little extra and I can go do something fun. But just being aware of it at that level, at that once a month level. The problem I have though is if something's wrong, I don't have anybody to blame. You see?
Other than yourself.
Yeah, and so I think maybe that's what happens is that at the end of the month, if you're not paying attention to it and things start to go bad, you're blaming each other when you're married.
That can certainly happen, and of course, I have a couple ideas about how to limit the blame, and that is you talk about how it's all going to work. If you're going to have you're going to join your income, or if you're going to keep it separate, if you're going to have something that I call like a family budget, and how much each of you will be, if you're both working, how much each of you will be contributing to that family budget, and who is paying what. One tool that I think can be very helpful for couples to limit conflict is for there to be a line item in your family budget, and let's say it's $500 for each of you. So that is an amount of money that each of you gets to spend each month without question or judgment or criticism by the other. That is just your personal monthly budget that you get to spend, because there's a lot of when couples look at credit card bills and they start going charge by charge and questioning the necessity of the charge, and that leads to a lot of judgment. So if you
That's
have
a
this
good
first
point.
month-
Yeah. Why did you need this? You didn't need that, though. You didn't need to buy this.
Oh, sure. I mean, you can hear the conversation, right?
So
do you really need more shoes, kind of thing. So.
So what is the psychological advice to the scenario that's I guess the one I grew up with, where mom is home and dad is working, and so he's really the one bringing the paycheck home, but the truth is they're sharing the money.
They are sharing the money, and that is still that kind of a setup, the more traditional setup, which is how that's the house where I was raised, and where there were 10 kids at home, and dad went to work every day, but that certainly isn't the situation now with me and my husband. So you still have to talk about it, and it has to feel like you are equal partners in this financial endeavor. You don't want to set up, if it's a situation where one partner is working and the other is staying home to care for the children or what have you, you don't want to set up a situation where the partner who's working kind of has veto power or is put in the role of making all the financial choices for the family, because that is very parental, and it's not a relationship of equals.
What about other major decisions? For example, let's say one of the two has a job opportunity in another town.
Yes.
And I don't mean drive, like you could commute. You would physically have to move. It would be impractical. For example, you're in Chicago. Let's say you had a job in L.A., a job offer. How do you do that? I mean, how do you handle that?
You mean in talking about it with your spouse?
Yeah. How do you maintain the marriage? I mean, either you're going to say, I'm going to pass up on the opportunity and stay here because you don't want me to move, or your partner's going to say, okay, I'll give up everything I have so that I can go with you and you can follow your dream. Either way, there's going to be somebody a little bit disgruntled.
Well, there certainly can be, and of course we know that that situation happens frequently.
Yeah.
So how do you talk about it? Well, you bring the opportunity that you've been given to your partner, and you sort of lay out the pros and cons, and you know that it's most likely going to be a more difficult move for one partner than the other, but you have to decide together if it's in the best interest of your family, and I think that's how you should make decisions in a marriage.
Sharing is so important in a relationship, no matter if you're sharing money or sharing time or just being right there. How do you keep the couples together over years and years and years without one feeling like they're not going to share anymore?
When you say not going to share anymore, could you say a little bit more about that, Robin?
Well, because maybe one wants to, they have the better job than the other person, and then they just want to keep most of the money for themselves, and then the other person, will have to just make do with what their income is. Say it's two people working in the same family.
Okay. What I would say is that scenario that you described doesn't sound very balanced or mutual. I would suggest that particular couple, they need to go in and talk to someone because the setup is that's going to create resentment. And resentment, long-term resentment in a marriage is toxic.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to, that particular couple, because the person who feels like they don't have access to the family income, they're likely going to be angry about that. And so they have to, I would suggest that a couple like this is a big issue that they need to resolve, and if they can't do it with the two of them, then they need to bring in a third party like a counselor.
Dr. Ann Malec is our guest. Her book is called Marriage in Modern Life, Why It Works, When It Works. We need to take a little break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about it. We started out the interview referencing our own children. And I did that because I thought the book seemed like a really good book for, like, on a gift, or just, hey, you guys are getting started out. Here's some things to think about to maybe nip it in the bud before things happen. And it does sound like that would work. But now, with your question, Robert, it sounds like it would even work for the married couple that's been married a long time. Dr. Malec will be right back after this break. This is WOCA Ocala.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. For today, intervals of clouds and sun becoming breezy and less humid, the high 78 to 82. Tonight will be mainly clear and comfortable with a low of 56 and a few inland spots, 62 along the coast. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, breezy and pleasant, high 79 to 83. Saturday, nice with sunshine, high 78 to 82. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
This is James Snyder, inviting you to join me each Sunday morning at 9:30 for Sunday Joy on 1370 AM, 96.3 FM.
Let's give it up for old asphalt and a new pair of shoes. Let's give it up for a good rhythm meeting a sweet melody. For a church cookout under clear skies. Let's give it up for good things coming together, like bundling your auto and other policies together with an Allstate agent, which can save you time and keep you better protected. Let's give it up for good.
To receive your comparative insurance quote, contact the McDonald Agency at 622-2333.
All right, 12 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Our guest is Dr. Ann Malec. She's in Chicago, and it looks like the picture on her website is Chicago in the background. DrAnnMalec.com is her website, so it's DrAnneMalec.com. We'll repeat that again before the end. Plus, Robin already has the website address on the WOCA guest list on the WOCA.com site if you want to go and check it out later on, and it'll be there for a while. Dr. Malec, there are so many other things that make up a happy marriage. I think in the very beginning, it's so idealistic in our minds. We have this vision of what it's like, and I often think that men think that women want to be married for reasons that aren't really true, and I think women think that about men. I think we think that the other one wants the marriage for something, and therefore we are required to give that something to the other. And that may not always be it. It's not always about sex for men, but that's the picture that society paints of men. Not that sex isn't important, but it's not always the only thing. And it's not always about money for women, so, and whatever else they always throw into the mix.
I think you are exactly right. It is definitely not just about sex or money. It is part of the issue here, and part of why I wrote the book is because I see so many couples coming into my practice who have great difficulty in creating a conversational safety zone, to being able to just talk about each other, or rather to talk to each other. What I think is the foundation, truly the foundation of a good, healthy, long-term marriage is you have to know how to communicate with each other and do so effectively. And without this safety zone where people know, where a couple knows that they can take their concerns, their fears, their complaints, their anxieties, their thoughts, their dreams to their partner, and that they will be heard respectfully. Now, I know I've been married 16 years. This is sometimes easier said than done if what your partner is saying you're just completely opposed to. But it's so important to create the space where your partner knows that they can go and they can talk to you. Because without the communication, I think if communication shuts down, you're really in big trouble. And And the way to keep that conversational safe space, I have some ideas about that, and that is that there's no yelling, there's no sarcasm, there's no anger, there's no rolling eyes, heavy exhales. It's keeping a conversation focused. It's inviting your partner to a discussion by saying, "Hey, I'd like to talk about this thing. When's a good time for you?" It's allowing yourself the space to say, "Hey, I'm getting worked up, I'm getting agitated," knowing that when we get worked up, the thinking part of our brain goes offline, and that you need a break, so you take a break, and then you come back to the conversation when you're feeling steadier. So those are the kinds of things that I think if a couple like your children that you were describing can build this conversational safety zone into their relationship, it will go a long way.
So when that conversation happens and then the couples want to resolve their issues, should they just sweep everything else under the carpet from day one till the current day they're talking about and then just start on a clean slate? Because sometimes if you bring up issues from the past, it does more harm than good.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It does. What I would suggest here is that can be, well, I guess there's a two-part to my answer. That's why it's so important to have that safe space where you can talk and you can share, and that issues actually get discussed. Maybe they don't get fully resolved, but they get discussed, because if they don't get discussed, they don't go away. They just sort of simmer in the background until you do have a sit down, and then sometimes it all comes out, and then that's very ineffective. So for a couple that has struggled in resolving conflict in the past by sitting down and talking, I would suggest that they, to set themselves up for success, start with perhaps an agenda of what they're going to talk about, and really, and this takes discipline, I know, but to actually sit and just work through the items on the agenda.
Do you know what's a hard thing to measure is love, and it almost sounds like it's cliche-ish to say it that way. So let me just, if you wouldn't mind me just illustrating what I'm trying to say here. I loved my parents. I love my son, and when I was married, I loved my wife. I would tell you that I could get into the worst argument ever with any of the people I just named, and it wouldn't affect my love for any of them.
Okay.
And yet you find yourself sometimes, and I don't know that this applies to me. I mean, this isn't necessarily about me, but I know a couple actually. They still love each other, but they couldn't live together. They're divorced, but they still see each other all the time. Not as a man and wife dating, but because they have two children, and the two daughters are grown by now. But. Mm-hmm. But they always speak fondly of each other. They really love each other, and yet they just couldn't live together. So the love is hard to measure, and it's hard to understand the role it plays, because you wouldn't divorce your father, your mother.
No.
You wouldn't divorce
sure.
your children.
Right.
So why do we divorce our spouses when we still love them, but we can't? I don't understand that.
Well, I think part of it is that our society focuses so much on the infatuation stage and love, and how easy and effortless that falling in love can feel. And that's the stage when you start thinking, oh, we're soulmates and our love is unconditional. And, of course, that isn't always true. Marital love is very conditional. So, but I think what happens is that people, because it's so easy in the beginning, they can be under the impression that it will always be this easy. And when it's not this easy, sometimes people think, well, we're just not well suited for each other, because this is a whole lot harder than I ever thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But part of that is because people don't know what relationship skills they need to bring, and in part because we aren't taught them in school, and your parents may or may not have taught the ones that you need to be successful today.
And there's always that responsibility factor, because once you're the individual is taking care of themselves, and then once another person is in the picture, you all of a sudden have to provide whatever it is, not just for yourself, but for that other person, and that does take a toll.
Yes, and it's and I think there's I just think we are unprepared for going into relationships about what it actually takes. That if instead of talking about, the size of the diamond, we talked about the need for forgiveness, or the need to be vulnerable, the need for honesty, to have really effective problem-solving skills, to always be willing to watch your tone of voice, to always be respectful to your spouse, to be kind, to be patient, to be tolerant. There's a whole lot. I mean, those characteristics get a whole lot less play than the more material aspects.
Wow, you are very good. So that takes us to the practical application of your book. It sounds like the book actually does those things. It gives us the tools, and that's an overused word, I guess, but I mean, it gives us the information that'll help us maybe understand what we need to change about our thinking about our marriages.
That was my purpose for writing it, because again, I would see this. The clients who I would see, they would present with the same marital issues, and so I just thought, well, I need to write this stuff down instead of just keep saying it. But yes, it is. These skills can be learned, and it's never too late to learn, and it works best if both partners are willing to change, and both partners are willing to engage in the same behaviors and skills.
And
as they move forward.
And with you as the mediator, do you see each partner individually and then collaboratively?
Robin, it depends on the couple and on their issues. If I think it would benefit them to see them separately, if I feel like I could get someone to open up more individually, then I will do that. But I generally try to keep it. I don't want to do couple therapy and individual therapy with the same couple.
Oh.
Can you fall in love again? Can you be 30 years into a marriage and you feel like you're not? That first love you talked about, that infatuation stage, can you get that again?
I would say, can you get the hormones and the neurotransmitters firing again 30 years later?
Yeah.
That might be tricky. However, what I will say is that human beings, we love novelty, right? We love safety, and we like newness. And so if a couple can focus on ways to continue to be interesting, ways to continue to develop themselves individually as a part of a marriage, of a relationship, that can bring, I think that can keep the passion, the interest, that really solid connection alive.
Yeah.
The novelty factor. The novelty factor is very big, because all of us get used to everything that's good in our lives. We all do. And so we seek new things, we seek novelty, and so it's just something to keep in mind.
Remember in Rocky when Adrian was in the coma?
Yes.
Prior to the coma, remember they were arguing all the time?
Yeah.
And then she comes out of the coma and she says, "Win,"
Yeah.
and the whole audience cheers. Well, that's the moment he falls back in love with her.
Yeah.
Because he thought she was going to die, So they had no problem after being married a while to argue. And I think this is really good information, and I'll end it the way I started it, is the fact that if you have somebody in your family, a young person getting married, you know that the road is there's no roadmap. This book might be, it sounds like a corny cliche, but it might be a guide, some kind of a roadmap, a GPS for marriage. Dr. Malec, you are wonderful. I loved this conversation. Thank you so much for being on the air with us today. The book is called Marriage in Modern Life. I mentioned the website. Is there any other way we get the book?
It is on Amazon.com, but you can certainly, both my Symmetry Counseling website and my Dr. Ann Malec website both have links to Amazon for purchase.
All right, excellent. And again, the website is drannmalec.com, DRANNEMALEC.com. I had a teacher named Miss Malec.
Oh, my.
In New York. Any relatives on Long Island?
I don't think so.
So same spelling and everything.
Wow.
Miss Malec, I remember, elementary school.
I think she was nice.
She was really nice. I still remember. Yeah, that's the sign of a good teacher when you're 60 years old and you still remember your 4th, 5th grade teacher.
Yeah.
Doctor, thank you so much for being with us today. That was great stuff.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, we'll be right back.
Is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. The search for answers continues into what exactly happened to Freddie.